I never thought I'd end up on an oil platform in the middle of the ocean, miles from anything familiar. I was just a regular guy trying to finish my degree in petroleum engineering at a decent state university. I had a rhythm to my days, nothing special but comfortable. I'd wake up around 7:30, make a lazy breakfast, usually just eggs and toast, then catch the campus shuttle to my morning lecture. Afternoons were spent in the lab or library. Evenings were Netflix, leftovers, and late-night calls with my sister back home. Sometimes I'd go out drinking with classmates, nothing wild, just enough to break the monotony of formulas and technical papers. The world made sense then. It had shape and logic and rules that followed through. I was always good with machines. I liked things that clicked into place, systems that obeyed physics and precision. Maybe that's why I got into this line of study in the first place. Oil was just the resource everyone hated but everyone needed, and I figured there'd always be money in working underground. I didn't care about the politics or the environmental debates. I just wanted a stable future, something I could build on. And I wasn't looking for anything extreme, not then anyway. But that changed the day I met Mr. Cole. It was a Wednesday, early spring. We were walking out of a fluid dynamics seminar when he cornered me. He wasn't a professor, not someone from the school. I didn't know who he was at first, just a guy in an outdated blazer and those weird oval glasses you only ever see on old photographs. He had this laminated visitor's badge clipped to his lapel, but I never caught what it said. Just a blur of white and blue. He called me by name before I had the chance to walk past, told me he'd been following my academic record, that I had a knack for the kind of work his company needed. I remember being surprised because I wasn't exactly top of the class. I was solid, reliable, not brilliant. I asked him who he was with, and he just said, "We run operations offshore, deep water mostly, and we're hiring." I figured it was some niche drilling company trying to scoop up young graduates early. It wasn't unusual. Recruiters showed up all the time on campus. But something about him stuck with me. He handed me a plain envelope, sealed, and told me to open it alone. Somewhere quiet. I almost threw it away that night, thought it was too weird, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a contract, not a brochure, not a pamphlet, not a friendly letter with a logo at the top. Just a short, blunt agreement typed in courier font, the kind old typewriters used. There was no company name, no contact number, only an address and a list of instructions. It said if I signed and mailed it back by Friday, I'd be flown out to their facility for initial training and orientation. It mentioned a generous monthly wage, benefits, and a living stipend that honestly felt too good to be real. I thought maybe it was a scam, but I couldn't see the catch. I ran it through a professor I trusted, and he shrugged, told me if I didn't want it, someone else would take it gladly. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just tired of routine. Or maybe there was something in the way that envelope felt heavier than it should have. Like it was carrying more than just a job offer. Either way, I signed it, I mailed it the next day. I didn't even tell my sister until after I sent it. She was the only family I had left, and she didn't love the idea of me vanishing into some unnamed offshore gig. But she knew I needed the money, needed the break from the grind. So she gave me her blessing with that half-joking, half-serious tone she always used when something felt off. I didn't hear anything for 4 days. Then I got a single text message from a number with no ID. It read, "Flight confirmed, 6:45 a.m., Terminal 3, Gate C7, pack light." No ticket attached, no airline mentioned, just that. And when I showed up at the airport, there was a man already waiting for me at the gate. He didn't introduce himself, just nodded once, checked my name off a clipboard, and handed me a plain boarding pass, the kind you print from a kiosk. Except there was no airline name, just the flight number and seat, 4A. The flight was quiet, maybe 15 people total, all silent, all alone, no one making eye contact. I remember thinking it felt more like a funeral than a job transfer. When we landed, it was already dark, maybe late evening, maybe later. I couldn't tell because my phone had lost service halfway through the flight, and my watch kept blinking. 12:00 like it had reset. We were met by another man, taller, dressed in the kind of weatherproof gear you see in Arctic documentaries. He led us to a helipad, no terminal, no customs, no welcome, just wind and salt, and that faint hum of ocean breathing under everything. The chopper ride was rough. I don't remember much except the cold and the sound, not the blades, not the engine, but this low pulse that started behind my eyes and never really stopped. When we arrived at the platform, the lights were already on. Dim orange halogens cutting into the fog like dying coals. The whole structure loomed up like something not built but grown, metal twisted in places. It shouldn't twist. Railings welded over other railings like afterthoughts. It looked old, impossibly old, like it had been there before the ocean even existed. I was led down a narrow hallway and given a room, told to rest. Orientation would begin at 0600 sharp. The walls were steel, but the floor creaked like rotting wood, and the window was sealed shut with bolts the size of my fist. I lay on the thin mattress, trying to fall asleep, but the hum was louder now. Not just a sound, a vibration in my bones. And somewhere in the distance, I swore I could hear a voice, not calling me, not speaking, just breathing, waiting, like it knew I was here now, like it had been waiting all along. I woke up to the sound of a deep groaning echo, like the platform itself was stretching its limbs, the kind of sound you feel more than hear. And for a second, I wasn't sure if I had actually slept or just drifted in and out of a daze. The light leaking in through the sealed window was pale grey, thickened by fog and the salt in the air. I sat up, still dressed from the night before, my boots at the edge of the bed damp with sea spray that somehow found its way inside. Even though the door had never opened, I didn't even get a knock. I just heard a faint chime come from a speaker in the ceiling, one long tone like a school bell. Then silence. I stepped out into the hallway, met with that same metallic smell, cold steel and oil fumes. The corridor curved slightly to the left, like the whole platform had been built in spirals, or maybe warped over time. I followed the sound of movement until I reached a mess hall, a small one, rectangular with long tables bolted to the floor and a vending machine that buzzed when it wasn't supposed to. 5 people were already there, all dressed in the same standard issue grey uniforms, all watching me without really watching me. You know the way people look when they've seen too much to bother with introductions. But still, one of them, young guy, buzzcut, wiry, gave a nod and said, "New guy, huh?" I told him yeah. First day. He smirked and went back to his bowl of something I couldn't recognize. The others didn't say much, just murmurs of names later when I asked. There was Jonah, the buzz-cut guy, Sasha, a redhead with eyes that never seemed to blink, Malik, quiet and heavy-set with thick arms and a slower way of talking, Tyler, who looked too young to be working out here but had the eyes of someone twice his age, and then Anne, older than the rest, early 40s maybe, tough posture, no nonsense. She watched me the longest, like she already knew something I didn't. After a few awkward minutes, the door creaked open and the old man walked in. He looked like he belonged to the platform, with a face full of lines and a long grey beard tucked into his collar. He didn't smile, didn't speak at first, just stared at each of us until we quieted, then said, "Orientation," and gestured for us to follow. We walked in silence down the corridor, the structure groaning again under our feet like it didn't appreciate the traffic. The man moved slowly but deliberately, and as we followed, I noticed little details that didn't sit right, like how every 5th light in the ceiling flickered in rhythm, or how the bolts along the floor had scratches around them like they'd been pulled up and replaced over and over. We passed a control room, a small medical bay, a stairwell leading up to what I assumed was the comms deck, and then we came to a narrow hall that ended in a solid black door. Unlike the others, this one had no handle, no keypad, just a red sign painted directly onto the steel. The words were faded, but still legible. "Do not enter for any reason." The old man stopped there, turned toward me, and pointed at the door. His voice was low, steady, almost kind. "This is the only place you're not allowed to go," he said. "Ever. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, this door stays shut. Do you understand?" I nodded, trying not to show how uneasy I felt. "This room," he said, "ain't like the rest of the place. It doesn't belong to us, not really." I asked him what he meant, and he just shook his head, muttered something like, "It's older than the rest," then moved on. We toured the engine room next, loud and wet, steam hissing from joints that looked rusted decades ago. Malik pointed out the generators. Sasha explained the pipe pressure monitors. Tyler just stared out a porthole the whole time like he was seeing something that wasn't really there. When we were finally done, the old man gathered us back in the mess hall and laid out the rules. Not OSHA stuff, not company policy, but the real rules. The morning after, I didn't speak to anyone during breakfast. I didn't even eat. I just sat there at the table staring at the dull reflection of my own face in the scratched stainless steel. The others didn't ask what was wrong. Maybe they already knew. Maybe they didn't care. Everyone here carried that same haunted look, like we were all just waiting our turn for something. My first work shift passed without much talking. I shadowed Jonah and Malik as they ran a systems check on the platform's central rig. Nothing exciting. Pressure gauges, drill alignment, basic stuff I could have done with my eyes closed. The machines made sense, even when everything else didn't. But my mind kept slipping back to that voice in the dark. That whisper of a game I didn't want to play again. The shape on the wall that didn't belong in any world I knew. I didn't tell them. I didn't tell anyone. Not during lunch. Not during the slow, quiet afternoon when fog curled around the windows and the sound of the sea felt too close. But after my shift ended, I was walking back to my quarters when I saw him, the old man, standing by the corridor outside the black door, just staring at it like he expected it to move. I almost walked past him, then stopped. I couldn't help it. I had to say something. He didn't look at me when I approached, just kept his eyes on that sealed door and said, "You heard it, didn't you?" I didn't even respond at first, just stood there, until finally I nodded. He sighed and reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it out. "Should have given you this sooner," he said. "But sometimes it's better when people learn fast." I took the paper from him. The folds were soft, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. I started to unfold it, but he stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Not here," he said. "When you're alone. When it's quiet." Then he turned and walked off, just like that. Like the conversation was over. I went back to my quarters and locked the door behind me, sat down on the bed with the paper in my lap, and just stared at it for a while. I didn't open it yet. I waited until the sun dipped down and the hallway lights dimmed to that warm orange glow. I felt like if I opened it too early, I'd regret it, like it would pull something toward me. Finally, just before lights out, I unfolded it. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, and typed in the same courier font as my original contract. At the top it said, "Obligations for survival," category red. Underneath were 5 rules, no explanations, no warnings, just cold instructions like someone whispering through time. 1. If the night game begins, do not look to the left, do not speak, do not win. If you hear knocking under the floor, do not acknowledge it. It's not maintenance. 3. Never follow anyone into the fog unless you can see their shadow. 4. If a second version of you enters the hallway, go to the engine room immediately and lock the door. 5. If you feel the urge to run and don't know why, run. Do not stop. Wake the others. Keep running. I read it again and again, that last rule sticking in my mind like a sliver under skin. I didn't know what it meant, not yet, but it scared me more than the rest, because I could already feel something in my bones, like I was waiting to feel that exact moment, like it was meant for me. I folded the paper back up and stuffed it under my mattress, trying to pretend it was just a dream, just nerves, just anything but real. Then I laid down, The lights dimmed to nothing, and I eventually drifted off. No night game that time, no whispers, just dark, cold sleep. I woke up groggy, hours later, with the buzzer in the ceiling giving one long tone for shift change. I checked the wall. It was smooth and silent, and got dressed in my uniform again. The hallways were dim but steady, no flickering, no fog inside yet. I headed toward the control room for my assigned night duty, walking past the same twisting corridors and bulkheads. And I remember thinking how strange it was that no matter how many times I turned, I never quite learned the layout. It changed, like a maze that remembered how lost you were the last time. When I got to the control room, it was empty. Anne was supposed to be there for crossover, but she wasn't. I sat in the chair and checked the monitors. Everything was normal. Green across the board. Pressure fine. Temperature steady. But the silence, it was off. Too deep. Too full. Like it wasn't empty, but crowded with breathless things that didn't move. I lasted maybe an hour before I felt it. Something in my chest, like a deep vibration. My hands started shaking, not from cold, but from something else. Like a bell inside me had been struck, like 1,000 nerves screaming at me all at once. And then it hit. Pure panic with no reason, no trigger, just a wordless terror that shot through my body like lightning. I bolted from the chair. I didn't think. I just ran down the corridor, boots echoing on metal, lights blurring past. I didn't even know where I was going until I heard it. The sound of breath not my own, behind me, not close but gaining. I turned a corner and saw Sasha asleep in a chair outside the rec room. I grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her hard. "Get up!" I yelled. "We have to run now!" She didn't ask why. She just saw my face and nodded. I moved to the next room. Tyler kicked his door in and pulled him up. I was sobbing by then, chest heaving, lungs burning, the fear growing louder like it had a voice and it was singing in my ears. We ran together, Sasha, Tyler, me, and by then others were waking, doors opening, panicked voices, questions I couldn't answer. We didn't stop until we were back in the mess hall, huddled together, and the sound finally stopped, like something gave up the chase, like whatever was following had gotten what it wanted. Fear. I sat on the floor and cried. Not just tears, but the kind that come from somewhere too deep to understand. I wasn't just scared. I was unraveling, and they knew it. Sasha sat next to me, put a hand on my back, didn't say anything, just stayed there, while Anne locked the mess hall door from the inside and said, "It's starting early this time," and Jonah handed me a mug of hot black coffee with hands that were shaking worse than mine. I looked around at the faces, the pale and exhausted faces, and I realized this wasn't new for them. Not really. It had just been my turn. I had followed the fifth rule. I had run, and I had lived, this time. After the night I woke everyone up, things didn't go back to normal. Not that they ever really were, but something shifted in the air. Like the platform knew I'd read the rules, and now it was watching, testing. The others didn't say much the next morning, just tired nods and weak conversation. But I could tell something had changed between us, like I'd joined some secret club no one wanted to be part of. We spent the morning in the mess hall longer than usual, just sitting there with our mugs, staring into coffee like it might offer answers. Malik cleaned a wrench that didn't need cleaning. Jonah tapped the table with a spoon in an uneven rhythm that started driving me insane until Anne snapped at him to stop. Sasha barely touched her food, eyes darting to the door every time it creaked. And Tyler, he just kept watching me, not in a suspicious way, but like he was waiting for something. I avoided asking questions, didn't want to be the rookie anymore, but my mind kept going back to that folded paper under my mattress and the fifth rule, how it didn't say, if you run, but when. Like it was a given, like it always happened to someone. Every cycle. After breakfast, I went to maintenance with Jonah and Sasha. We had to recalibrate the coolant systems, basic stuff. But we kept passing by that same corridor, the one that led to the black door, and I swear the hallway felt longer than before, stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Jonah stopped once mid-step and said under his breath, That smell's getting worse. I asked what smell, and he looked at me like I'd just admitted I didn't know what fire was. The rust and seawater, he said. But it's wrong, too warm, too sweet. I hadn't noticed it until then, but he was right. It was subtle, not constant, more like something that drifted past you, just for a second, like breath on your neck. I didn't say anything, just nodded and followed. But I kept glancing down that corridor as we passed it. And that door never looked the same twice. Some days it was jet black. Others it looked darker, like something behind it was absorbing light. And once, I swear to you, I saw scratches on the wall beside it, 5 parallel lines, deep and jagged, like something had tried to claw its way in or out. I asked the old man about it later that evening. Caught him outside near the railing where he liked to stand and smoke those thin cigars that smelled like burning rope. I told him what I saw, asked him what was inside that room, what it really was, and he gave me this long stare, not angry, not surprised, just tired, then said, "There are things you trap, and there are things you distract." I didn't understand what that meant. Asked if it was a machine or a vault or something classified. He laughed once, sharp and humorless, then dropped his voice and said, "We didn't build this room, son. We found it." That shut me up. He flicked ash into the wind and added, "It was already here when the platform was installed, welded into the substructure. Like it grew there. Engineers didn't know what to make of it. Management wrote it off as an old storage bay from an abandoned project, sealed it up, forgot about it. But it didn't forget about us." I asked, "Why no one left? Why no one shut the whole place down?" And he looked at me like I'd asked why people still breathe air. "Because it doesn't let you leave, not really," he said. "People quit, sure. They take the helicopter back to shore, sign the forms, disappear into the world. But the ones who break the rules, they don't go anywhere. They just stop being people." I didn't sleep well that night. Kept hearing footsteps that didn't match anyone's pattern. Too slow, too heavy. And once, just once, I swear I heard my own voice whisper something in my ear, soft and hoarse like it had been buried alive. I didn't turn, didn't speak, just pulled the blanket over my head like a child and waited until morning. The next few days passed in uneasy silence. No new incidents, no night game, no knocking. But the tension kept building, Tyler told me once, during a quiet moment in the control room. "It cycles," he said. "The quiet is worse than the noise, because it means something's charging up." I asked him what happened before I got here, what his mistake had been. He didn't answer directly, just rolled up his sleeve and showed me his forearm, pale and blank. No veins, no hair, just smooth like polished wood. I flinched and he pulled the sleeve back down. "It asked for a piece," he said, "so I gave it what I thought I didn't need." That night, just after 2 a.m., I woke up again, not from sound, but from silence. The kind of silence that feels like pressure, like the world is holding its breath. I sat up and looked around, and that's when I noticed the paper on my mattress wasn't under it anymore. It was on top, unfolded, and the 5th rule had been circled in red ink. I didn't do that. I know I didn't. Then the panic started again. Not like before. This time it was different. No noise, no chasing steps. Just that pressure inside my chest, like something building, like static in my teeth. And I knew it was happening again. Rule 5. I didn't wait this time, didn't question it. I ran, barefoot, pajama pants soaked in sweat, bolting down the hall, banging on doors, yelling for them to wake up. "Run! Get up! Move!" I screamed. I wasn't crying at first, not until I saw Sasha's face in the doorway, already pale before she even asked what was wrong. Then it hit me. Whatever it wasn't just about me, it was coming. Not for one of us, but all of us. I saw something in the far hallway, something tall, long arms that scraped the walls as it moved, head bent like it couldn't fit the corridor, and no face, just skin stretched tight over something that pulsed underneath. I fell, my legs gave out. I started sobbing, crawling, whispering, "Please, please, not again." And that's when Malik picked me up, just grabbed me like I weighed nothing and carried me back to the mess hall where the others were already gathering. Doors slamming, locks turning. Tyler shaking and whispering something over and over under his breath. Anne stood at the window with a fire axe, watching the hallway like she expected a war. And the old man walked in, last, calm, quiet, closed the door behind him and said, "You brought it again, but you brought us too." And for a moment I wasn't alone. I was broken, terrified, sobbing in the corner. But I wasn't alone. They were there, their hands on my shoulders, Malik's big arms wrapped around me like a shield, Sasha whispering something calming in a language I didn't know. And I felt the fear ease, just a little, enough to breathe, enough to survive one more night. And then I looked back at the door, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I heard a knock. Not from outside, but from under the floor. When I heard the knock, I didn't breathe, not for a full 10 seconds. It wasn't loud, it wasn't even urgent, just a soft, rhythmic tapping, like knuckles on wood. But it came from below, from beneath the mess hall, and that shouldn't be possible. That space beneath us was sealed, welded shut, inaccessible. At least that's what I'd been told, but I heard it, clear as my own pulse. 1, 2, 3. A pause. 1, 2. Another pause. Then 5 taps in a row, slow and deliberate. I thought of the rules immediately. Rule 2. If you hear knocking under the floor, do not acknowledge it. It's not maintenance. I felt the words in my bones, like they were tattooed on my nerves. And suddenly the mess hall didn't feel like a safe place anymore. It felt like a box, like a trap, like we were all just lined up waiting to be peeled open. The others heard it too. I saw their eyes shift downward, subtle glances toward the floor like they were trying not to look, not to notice, not to acknowledge. Anne was gripping the axe so hard her knuckles had gone bloodless. Malik muttered something under his breath in a tight loop. "Not real, not real, not real." Over and over like a mantra. The old man was the only one who moved. He walked to the center of the room, tapped his boot once against the steel grate, then turned to us and said, "Don't speak, don't respond, it's mapping us." That's what he said. It's mapping us. I didn't even want to know what that meant, didn't want to ask, but the knocking continued, softer now, lighter, but moving, following. It traced a line along the floor, toward the benches, toward me. I backed up against the wall, heart racing, teeth clenched so hard my jaw popped, and I thought, I'll scream. If it touches me, I'll scream. I won't be able to help it. And I knew that was what it wanted. It wanted acknowledgement. And then it stopped. Complete silence again. That thick, suffocating silence that filled every space inside my skull. Anne motioned for us to stay still, and we did, for what felt like a full hour. No one spoke, no one moved. The lights flickered once, and then returned. And I started to believe it was over. That maybe we had waited it out. That maybe the thing had lost interest, but then the power went out. Total black. No emergency lights, no backup hum. Just darkness, and the sound of 6 people inhaling fear like smoke. And then, I heard my own voice, whispering directly in my ear. It's me. I turned. I broke rule 1 without thinking. I looked to my left. There was nothing there. But the cold was immediate, so sharp it bit into my skin. I couldn't breathe, my lungs locked up. And then I saw it. Not in front of me, not behind me, but on the reflection of the mess hall's tiny microwave window, just a sliver of glass. And I saw me. Not how I looked now, but hollowed, pale, grinning with a mouth that was far too wide and teeth too long and sharp like nails. It wasn't just a doppelganger, it was a replacement. Something wearing me like a skin. And it mouthed the words again, "It's me." But its eyes were wrong. Too human, too wet, like someone else was trapped inside it and screaming. I stumbled backward, knocked into the old man, and for a second, I was screaming. I couldn't stop myself, and just like that, the lights came back on, buzzing faintly, yellow and dim, and everyone stared at me, not in confusion, not even surprise, but with quiet, exhausted pity. The old man didn't say a word, just walked over to the wall where the emergency fire panel was, ripped it open, and handed me the flare gun. "If you see it again," he said, "you don't run, you don't scream, you burn it, even if it looks like you." I didn't want to take it. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold the grip. But I did, because I knew what I saw wasn't done with me. That thing wasn't just passing through. It had found something it wanted. Me. And the worst part, the thing that made my stomach twist even worse than the face. It had whispered a number into my ear before I turned, soft and low. The number 5. And I don't know why. I don't know what it meant. But when I looked up, there were 6 of us in the room, including me, and suddenly I understood. Understood why the knocking stopped by my feet, why the rules were circled, why my voice had whispered, "It's me." Because it wasn't done replacing, it was choosing. And 5 meant only 5 of you are real. One of us wasn't. One of us had already been taken. I looked around the room. Anne, Sasha, Malik, Tyler, the old man, and I felt the air turn colder with each breath. I didn't say it out loud, didn't dare accuse anyone, but I saw it in their eyes. They were all thinking the same thing, all counting, all wondering if they were the real one, if I was the real one. And I suddenly felt this horrible sense of isolation, like my memories were paper and someone was rewriting them while I blinked. Sasha leaned in and whispered, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And I laughed, actually laughed, but it came out cracked and hollow because I didn't know the answer. I couldn't see her hand. It was gone, or blurred, or wrong. I dropped the flare gun, dropped to my knees, started sobbing again because I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't want to run again. I didn't want to guess anymore. I just wanted to know if I was still me. But the knocking didn't come back, and the voice didn't return, and the microwave door was closed now, sealed tight like it was afraid of what it might show. The old man picked up the flare gun and said, "Tomorrow we talk about the door." And he meant the door, the forbidden room, the welded one we weren't allowed to touch, the one that hadn't stopped humming since the knock began. I crawled into the corner and curled up. Sasha sat beside me again, didn't say anything, just sat there, and I felt like a child again, broken and raw, and somewhere in the platform's cold steel belly, I swear I heard something breathing, not loud, not fast, just patient, waiting, because I had broken rule 2 and now it knew my name. The next day came slow, the kind of day that didn't feel real, like time was stitched together wrong, like every minute lagged behind the one before it. None of us spoke much. We barely even looked at each other. And when the old man came into the mess hall and said, "It's time," no one argued, no one asked questions. It was like we'd all known this was coming, like we were just waiting for the last piece of the nightmare to crawl out from behind the steel. He led us down into the lower levels, past piping rooms and flooded corridors that hadn't been used in years. The air grew colder the deeper we went, but not cold like wind. It was hollow, cold like a space that never had light in the first place. I held the flare gun in both hands, fingers twitching on the grip. Sasha had a headlamp strapped to her forehead. Anne carried a crowbar. Malik had a fire axe slung over one shoulder. And Tyler just followed, eyes glazed like he wasn't even really there anymore. We reached the corridor with the black door and stopped. No one spoke, but we all felt it, that this was the place. The pulse of everything wrong on the platform came from here. The old man pulled out a key, not a digital one, not company issued, but old and rusted and wet, like it had been fished out of a corpse's pocket, and he said, "This door opens once every 13 months, but never from the inside. He inserted the key and turned it. The lock made a sound I'll never forget, like bones snapping underwater, and the door eased open, not pushed, not pulled. It wanted to open. We stood there in a line, looking into the black, and inside there was nothing. Just a long hallway of pulsing red lights, like we'd stepped into a submarine with no crew. The walls were wrong. Too smooth, no bolts, no welds, no seams, just seamless metal that felt grown instead of built, Sasha said. This place wasn't made by people. And she was right. The further we went in, the less things made sense. Our footsteps echoed like we were walking through a throat. Anne kept glancing over her shoulder, whispering that she heard something behind us. Tyler walked slower and slower until he finally stopped and said, "I'm not going any further." We all turned and looked at him and he said, "I saw what's ahead. I've been here before." The old man asked him what he meant, and Tyler said, "I woke up here once, 2 years ago, before I ever came to the platform. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a dream, but it wasn't. This place remembers us." Then he just turned around and walked back into the dark hallway. Never said goodbye, never looked back. We tried to follow, but the hallway changed behind him, closed itself off like a clenched fist, and just like that, Tyler was gone. Sasha screamed his name, hit the wall with her flashlight. Malik tried to break through with the axe, but it was useless. The wall wouldn't budge, wouldn't bleed, wouldn't scream. It just was. The old man said, "He made his choice, we can't save everyone." And something about the way he said it made me think he wasn't just talking about Tyler. We kept walking, and the hallway finally opened into a round chamber, a perfect circle with no windows, no doors, no ceiling, just red light and a pit in the middle. Something was in it, breathing, slow and deep, like a lung buried in the earth. Malik stepped forward and said, "This is where it comes from." And I think he was right. The pit didn't have depth, it had gravity. It pulled at you, pulled at your thoughts, made you imagine things you didn't want to remember, things you hadn't told anyone. And I suddenly knew what the rules were, why they existed. They weren't warnings, they were bargains. The platform wasn't cursed, it was feeding. And the rules kept us just far enough away from the center that we didn't see it clearly, didn't touch it, but we'd broken them. And now it wanted more. I felt it looking at me, not with eyes, but with want. The kind of want that comes from a thing that doesn't know what you are, only that you exist, and that you're warm and soft and finite. The old man opened a small steel box he'd carried all the way down and pulled out what looked like a glass globe filled with black liquid. It shimmered like oil, but moved like something alive. He looked at each of us and said, "This is our trade," and he threw it into the pit. For a moment, everything stopped. The breathing, the hum, the cold, even our thoughts. And then there was a sound like 1,000 sighs released at once, and the red lights went out, replaced by dim white ones, soft and normal, like hallway fluorescence. We stood there for a long time, not speaking. And then the door behind us opened on its own. Not the one Tyler vanished into, the original black door, now just a normal steel hatch. We left, one by one, back up the stairs, through the corridors, up into daylight again, and everything looked the same. The sea, the cranes, the clouds, all perfectly normal. And that's what scared me most. We waited for Tyler to return, but he didn't. The old man said he wouldn't. Some things don't come back, he told us, and no one argued. The rules were updated the next day. His name was removed, and the 5th rule now had a new clause. If one of you disappears, do not search for them. They are no longer part of your world. The knocking didn't come back. The night game never restarted, and no one mentioned the forbidden room again. The platform was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the ocean is watching you. Weeks passed without incident. Malik went back to his tools. Sasha took longer shifts in the control room. Anne talked about leaving but didn't. And the old man stayed in his usual spot near the railing, smoking, always watching the horizon. And me. I kept the flare gun under my pillow. I read the rules every night before bed, and sometimes, just as I'm drifting off, I hear the word 5, whispered faintly in the back of my mind. Not loud, not clear, but present. And I wonder if Tyler made a deal of his own, if he stayed behind not to be taken, but to hold something in place. Whatever we buried in that pit, it still breathes, and one day, it might wake up again. But until then, we follow the rules, we work our shifts, we sleep with the lights on, and we don't ask who we really are. Because maybe, just maybe, there are fewer of us than we think. When my contract ended, I left the platform without saying much to anyone. The chopper blades thudded above me as we lifted off, and I looked down one last time at that structure in the ocean. Small now, insignificant against the endless grey, but I knew better. I knew what lived beneath it, what breathed in its core. And even as the clouds swallowed it, I couldn't forget the weight of that black door, or the red-lit hallway, or the sound of Tyler's footsteps fading forever into the dark. When I landed back on land, I didn't celebrate, I didn't sleep for 2 days. I just went home, back to the city where people complain about traffic and coffee prices, and not once think about the things that live in the deep. My sister was waiting for me outside the apartment. She hugged me hard, said I looked thinner, colder. I told her I was fine, and part of me believed it. Being on solid ground again did something to my head, like the pressure of the ocean had finally lifted off my chest. That night we ate together like old times, watched some dumb sitcom reruns and laughed even though none of it was really funny. And for a few hours, I felt normal again. I felt like myself again, until the second morning when the message arrived. It wasn't an email, not a phone call, not even a letter. It was a black envelope slid under my door with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with a printed message that read, "Completion confirmed, rule compliance logged, compensation delivered." Below that was a bank slip. A deposit had been made to my account, a number so large I had to reread it 4 times. More than any oil job, more than hazard pay, more than any bonus I'd ever heard of. It wasn't a reward, it was silence money. A payment for keeping my mouth shut, for surviving something no one else was supposed to talk about. I stared at it for a long time, fingers trembling, heart cold, and I knew that everything had been orchestrated from the beginning. Every assignment, every rule, even Tyler's disappearance. I wasn't hired to fix machinery. I was tested, watched, measured like meat under a microscope. The rules weren't just survival instructions. They were filters, and I passed. Or maybe I failed. I don't know anymore. I kept the paper in a locked drawer, and I haven't touched the money. Not yet. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Sometimes I wake up and expect to see another envelope, or to hear that knocking under my floor again. But it never comes. And life keeps moving forward like nothing ever happened. I take long walks now. I talk to my sister more. I try to rebuild the version of myself that didn't know what lived out there in the water. But it's not easy. You don't forget something like that. You don't unsee the red lights, or the reflection in the microwave door that wasn't you. Some nights I sit on my balcony, stare at the ocean in the distance, and wonder if the platform is still there, still humming, still feeding, and if the rules are being followed, or if someone else is breaking them now. Whatever the truth is, I'm home, and I'm breathing, and for now, that has to be enough. That was my story. I work on an oil platform. We have strange rules. If you're still here, thank you for listening to the whole thing. Some places in this world are built to keep something in, and others to test if we're strong enough to walk away from them. I don't know which one the platform was, but I survived it, and that's more than I can say for everyone. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys quiet, creeping horror. Let me know in the comments. Would you have followed the rules?